Hey everyone, it's Andy from Be Kind Homestead, and today's video is all about mice and how to deal with them and get rid of them for good. So when dealing with rodents, the first thing that you really want to do is inspect everywhere and get a really good lay of the situation. Just because you found one mouse running by doesn't mean that there's not 10. It also doesn't mean that there is 10. You never really know the situation until you really start inspecting and looking around. Really, during your inspection, the main focus that you want to have is the walls that are barriers between you and the outside. The one area that you do want to take a good look at inside as far as interior is of course around the kitchen, just because there's food there. If you have a very clean kitchen, that doesn't mean that mice aren't there. They'll get drawn there just from the heat and the food, the smell of food. So the first step that you really want to take is you want to get a solid lay of the situation that you're dealing with. So you want to go through the basement and the attic, especially if you have an attached garage, any attached outbuildings, you definitely want to look through those too. And you want everything to be accessible, and you want to be searching for evidence along the way. While you're doing that, you also want to be looking along utility pipes, electrical lines, anything that comes into the building from the outside, for any sizable holes that rodents might be able to come in and out of. There is a steel rodent mesh that you can get online. It's very affordable, that you can use along with a screwdriver to plug those holes. I'll give you a few examples of doing that. Certainly be careful around electrical with this stuff, but you can use silicone. If you need to, call a handy person, call someone to do it. You don't do anything that you don't feel comfortable or safe doing. You may find that there's not a whole lot of evidence around, hopefully, and then it can get you down to a target area that you have to deal with, or you might find mouse poop all over places that you haven't looked. But if you do, don't panic. The next step, after you just get around and look at everything, get everything as accessible as possible, obviously you're going to want to go around and clean up all that evidence. And there's a reason for that besides cleanliness. If you find mouse poop everywhere in a closet that you haven't looked in 3 years, that mouse poop could be 3 years old. You never know. So you want to clean up everything so that when you're looking in the future, you have an idea of what's new and what's going on. So now that you've inspected everywhere, you've made everything accessible, you've plugged holes that you found on the inside, you've cleaned everything up, now you want to go and check on the outside. Of course, there could be some way that the mice are getting in that you're not seeing from the inside. So checking inside is really more of an insurance policy, but you want to absolutely inspect the exterior too. You want to inspect along the sill where the wood meets the foundation in the case of my house. And I want to make sure that there's no gaps bigger there that I can fit my pinky into. Mice can fit into very small holes, so you do want to be careful with that. You can use the wire mesh on the exterior too. I did in a corner post that I found that I don't think mice are using, but they might, so I plugged it anyway. While checking the exterior, I don't have one, so I can't give you an example of it, but a lot of people have central air units, and they will have the vinyl tube that goes up the outside of the building, and it usually can lead into an upper floor or a part where the unit itself will be kept inside to keep it from the weathering. And that's definitely a spot that you want to check. It's a high risk area that I've seen a lot, where mice climb in and they end up getting in through the attic because they climb up that foam insulation on the outside, and you can see scratch marks a lot in the foam if mice have been using it, or that foam insulation will be completely gone and chewed off. The most important thing that you want to check is gable end vents up high. Almost all houses universally have them, and mice are very good climbers, as well as chipmunks and squirrels and bats will end up in your attic if you don't put 1/4 inch screen over the inside of that gable end vent. If for some reason you have to put it on the outside, that's okay too. You can screw it right over the outside of it. That end vent is more for airflow to fight mold. You also have to be careful up high of trees touching the house. I actually have some trees touching the back of my house right by one of my gable end vents, and I still have to cut it down, so I have footage to share with you. But you're going to want to cut that stuff back and clear that up. I do have the screen over the inside, so they're not getting in anyway. But you do want to clear that stuff back, because it does make it easier for things to get access up higher. So now that we've gone around everywhere inside, we've gone around the outside, we've checked everything, we've plugged holes, we've cleaned up, we've got a decent idea of the situation as it is now at least. Now we're going to want to put out some sort of control measures, because plugging all of those holes, depending on the situation, unfortunately, you may have trapped some mice inside. I would definitely put snap traps or whatever you choose in an out of reach area where you found the most evidence while you were doing your cleanup, and check them regularly. As you're going forward and checking them regularly, obviously you're going to know what's going on for the most part, but keep an eye out on just the accumulation of new evidence. Of course, you're going to want to clean that stuff up, but the more you see a decrease in evidence, obviously that means you're seeing a decrease in mice, and it also allows you to kind of get a target area of where your remaining problem is. You want to go and keep an eye out as to where the evidence is and kind of target that area and look for holes where they're getting in and out and how you can address that going forward. So I'm saving it for the bitter end, but of course there's the controversial topic of using bait. I am licensed in Mass and Rhode Island. I don't work in the industry anymore, but I am still licensed in Mass and Rhode Island for this. And I like to recommend that people use bait as an absolute last measure. Bait moves up the food chain and is a risk to a lot more than mice. So I don't like to use it if I don't have to. All of those glue traps that they do sell, if you trap mice and get them stuck on those and you do find them alive, you can just pour oil on those and release them. And even if it's cold outside, if you want to keep mice inside until spring, and I've nothing against it, it's Be Kind Homestead. I'm all for it. So if you want to do that, I will say if you use those glue traps, it is not very well known that you can pour olive oil onto those and get the mice off of those. If you're looking for other have a heart and humane traps that you can use, just be careful because some of them do have mechanisms that go and they're not very humane. So just be careful with what you use on that front. I can't stress enough. I know that this is a stressful situation for a lot of people that have to deal with this. There's nothing you did wrong. It's not your fault. We're part of nature, and sometimes we just have to deal with these things. Do you have any questions or comments at all? As always, feel free. I'm here to help any way that I can. Best of luck out there, and as always, be kind to everybody.